Good. Is it starting recording? Is it starting recording? It's saying it's starting recording. So yes, good day to you all. My name is Donato. Welcome to the show. And today we have none other than Laura Beth. Welcome to the show, Laura Beth.
Good morning. Nice to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Well, I've got to say, Laura, it's fantastic to see you out on location. Here we are talking about running, and I've caught you out on a run.
Yep.
Where are you right now? Where are you right now?
I'm in Shipley Park. It's about 10 miles away from Derby City.
Okay. Excellent. So in the Midlands, here I am in Middle Earth as well. This is proper Middle Earth here in the Lickey Hills, and you're in beautiful. I mean, the snow, sunshine. How does it feel out there? You've just done. You say you've just done a mile run, so I've interrupted your run, and.
I've just done a bit of a warm up, but it's beautiful out here. It's not even that cold. It's lovely.
It's lovely. You look fantastic out there. I love that beaming smile and things out there, and it's fantastic. And as I said, thank you for the time for you given to come on the show here to talk. We're going to talk about some quite sensitive topics, and you've got a fantastic story, which the reason why I wanted you to come on was to share your story and what you've been through, because right now, in terms of what's going on around the world, stating the bleeding obvious, it's a bit dark times for a lot of people. And a lot of us do go through dark times. And whilst and I'm sure yourself as well, Laura Beth, we are very, naturally positive people, and we've got a lot of good things to share, that we need to appreciate that sometimes we, you, me, I, right now, past, and so on, are going through times where maybe we need some help and nudge. So there is some links in the description below, which goes to explaining a bit more of the story about Laura Beth and what she's been through and how she got into running. And we'll talk about the Abbott World Majors. Here I am. I thought I'd wear my Boston shirt in honour for you because you'd ran Boston. And obviously I've got the bib there, the Boston Marathon, the Chicago. I know you've done both those as well. We'll talk more about the Abbott World Majors, but in that link there in the Abbott World Majors, you were featured on that story there. So on there, there's links about topics that Laura Beth's going to touch on. So if you are impacted in some way and you want to know some more information and support, please do go to those links. But yes, Laura Beth, I mean, so tell us, obviously what connects us all is the running. How did you get started in running?
Yeah, okay. So I used to just do a couple of jogs, so to speak, a week, and I got approached in this park actually by somebody I used to go to school with, and he suggested me joining a running club, and I was very, very nervous about it, if I was completely honest with you. But yeah, my brother pushed me into it. He said, just give it a try. And I absolutely loved it. So I joined a club, and 11 months later, I ran Paris Marathon, my first marathon. And the rest is history. Yeah, I mean, since then, my life changed quite a bit, actually, because running has changed my life for the better.
Yeah.
I love it.
For the better. So which we'll give a shout out to the running club. Which club is that?
I've actually moved. So I was with the first running club was with a club called Smalley Road Runners at the time. There was quite a small beginners running club, and they're actually really big now. But no, a year after I moved to Hena Running Club, which I found was a bit more challenging for me, and it was better for me to make the move. So there's some quicker pace runners, and at the time that's what I wanted to do, is to improve my speed. So yes, I moved to Hena Running Club, and then I'll be honest with you, I've not club run for 2 years, but I've recently rejoined, so I'm proud to say that I'm a running club member again.
Yay! Yes, it is great always having other club members and stuff. You said that you'd done your first Paris Marathon was your first marathon. So did you sort of literally go straight into, because obviously you're an established runner now, you've ran 4 of the world majors. I was talking about the Abbott World Majors, and we'll go more into that later in a moment, but you've gone through and you've Boston qualified, ran Boston. Did you sort of feel as though you needed to get straight into marathon running like some people do? It was 11 months you'd been running before you'd done Paris.
I am an all or nothing kind of person.
Yeah.
I am. And I was hooked on the big miles. I love the long big runs. And for me, I would sooner. I love going out for a 20 miler. I mean, now I've got up to 33 miles now. And I just love that feeling of being out there for a long time. And I love the feeling after, as we all do. But yeah, I'd only ran probably a couple of smaller races before I ran my first full marathon. And then, yes, since then I've been hooked on it. And now, obviously, I'm slightly dipping my toe into the ultra world, which is my next goal.
Yeah. Well, we'll touch on the ultras as we go through. But yeah, in terms of the running, you say it's been for the good, and we'll go into the topics, asking about you in terms of what you've been through in terms of your life. Because obviously, when I was reading that story on Abbott's World Major website, and obviously similar to yourself, I'm on their mailing list, so I get their regular emails. And when I did receive that mail, I think it was 2nd or 3rd of January, so it was a New Year one. And as we were saying earlier, before I started recording this, I'd open the email, and sometimes when you see someone, because we've been following each other on social media for near on 5 years now, so it's almost like I know you. We've never physically met, but the thing with social media is we feel like we know each other in terms of what we posted. And obviously we do appreciate that what we post isn't always the whole full story, isn't it? Sometimes some people are happy sharing things, some people overshare, some people don't share anything and keep it more private groups and so on. But you have quite a story to share. When I saw that email, I thought, oh, it can't be Laura Beth that I know from Instagram, because it looks like her. And I thought, no, really? And then obviously I went back to the social media, looked at it, and you'd posted about it, and I said, yeah, it is you, yeah. So I immediately messaged you, left a comment. I says, what a great story. And I've got to be honest, I didn't know what you'd been through till I saw that email. And isn't it interesting how we see people, and I see more and more of it now within the social media, talking about rainbows and posies and sunshine and all that, and it's all lovely and fluffy, but nobody really knows what's going on under the surface and what we've been through. And do you want to talk us through what you've been through, Laura Beth? And obviously, as I said, with the dark times we have, I need to stress to those watching, listening, is there is light at the end of the tunnel. You can see Laura Beth now, she's happy, smiley. You've been through that. Do you want to talk about what you've been through?
So I'm 37. When I was 18, I developed an eating disorder. So I had very disordered habits towards food, and I wanted to eat as little as possible. So I carried on this for, about a year, where I wasn't eating very much at all. And then something clicked one day, and I thought, I can't carry on doing this anymore. I need food, I need fuel. And obviously I was very young at the time. I started eating again. However, I felt so guilty every time I had a meal. And this is when I began a relationship with bulimia. And then me and bulimia, we've been evil best friends, should I say, for about 19 years, such a long time. It was very, very difficult. And at first with running kind of aided my eating disorder, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
So it would be another way to go and burn my food off. Instead of thinking I need my food to go and run, I used to eat and think, right, I need to get rid of this in certain ways. So I would go off, and that would happen. But luckily, I had a very understanding doctor on a third visit to the doctor, because I was to and fro with doctors. I should say that I've tried all sorts of, I've been on medication, I've tried counselling, but luckily I found a doctor who was so much more understanding with me. Together we decided that I should probably try antidepressants. So I've been on antidepressants for a year. It's actually a year this March that I've been free off medication. And it feels quite emotional talking about it now.
I was going to say, Laura, if at any point, I can sense the emotion coming through with yourself. And as you say, you've sort of you feel the emotion now that you've been off those drugs. So please continue. No, I can feel it. I can see it. And those who are watching can see it as well. This is raw energy here, Laura.
It is. It's funny, something so much part of your life for so many years. But so a year in March I've been off medication. But but it was very dark for a long time. I was in quite a bad place actually a couple of years ago. I was in a dark, bad place. So I've got this thing in my head now where I just want to talk about it, so it opens up for the people to talk about instead of keep bottled away like I did for so many years, because it's so destructive, and eating disorder is so secretive. But the more I speak about it and the more that I open up to people, it's just easier and better to fight against. And I've had a lot of people they're in not particularly great places with eating disorders, and now they're talking to me, which I think is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I've got to say, Laura Beth, I can feel your emotion here, even though whilst we're both in the UK, and I can just see in your eyes and your face that and your voice in terms of the emotion there, and I totally get it. Whilst I've not been through an eating disorder, we've all been through issues, and I think sometimes, like what you say, is just talking it out, and then you can see. And I've spoken with so many people. Some I've recorded for shows like this. Others it's just private conversations, that we have, and it is always good to talk. What made you? I don't know if it's an appropriate or inappropriate word. What made you? Because you say you were bottling it. What made you, dare I say, come out with this? What made you suddenly want to share?
So it was going to a clinic. So I started going to an eating disorders clinic, which I now volunteer for. And I found that speaking to the people that was in a similar sort of position to me, and it just made me think that maybe if I didn't keep it so much of a secret anymore, maybe I could fight it a little bit better. So I just kept it quiet, because growing up, mental health problems, and especially eating disorders, is something that have always been kept quiet.
Yeah.
People don't like talking about. However, now people are speaking more about this. But for 20 years of my life, it was just this big dark secret that I needed to keep quiet. So so going to clinic, that really helped, and then having some really good support around me, and I just thought, well, maybe I should try and talk about it. And it's since then that everything has really started to change for me.
Yeah. No, I can see the massive change, and in a way, also seeing those things and reading about it makes it's people suddenly realise that there is more to people than, as I say, the social media face, the social media picture. But for someone who may be going through something similar right now, there may be someone watching, listening, and is in that place where they want to keep it to themselves or to that one friend, and it's their secret and nobody else knows. What would you recommend to those people in terms of to help them overcome what they have, or to understand it more?
Yeah, well, there's some really, really good charities out there. So Beat brilliant, and the charity that I work at, I volunteer for, called First Steps. There's some really, really good online charities. But I would say first and foremost, just to speak to somebody that you can trust, because it was speaking to one person that everything just changed for me. Not to bottle it up, but also I'm quite strong in saying that if you've got a friend or you're concerned about somebody, then you go and talk to them as well, because it's very difficult to open up and talk to somebody when you're in a dark place.
Yeah. So I think, as there was an analogy of people, where now we're encouraged more to reach out to people.
Definitely.
And I say, sometimes for me, chatting to people like you, whether it be for recording purposes for podcasts and YouTube, or just private chats, sometimes for me this is like my therapy. Talking to like-minded people like yourself, we're positive and we enjoy our running, and having something to share. So as you're saying, it's go and speak to people you trust. Would you say going to a GP doctor is opening up there?
Yeah, I would definitely advise it. I was just unlucky because I didn't have a very good experience the first couple of times I visited the doctor, but my doctor, she was absolutely brilliant. She really was. And it was through her that I started medication. That was a big turning point in my life, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
But of course, it is just pick up the phone or just speak to somebody. But And like I say, I think just keep an eye on the friends and the people that you care about. See if anybody's habits change, or if anybody seems really positive.
And there's lots of things you can look for, and obviously if you do know someone, you can see if a pattern or something does change. And I think it's a case of, I often hear the word, and they say it's quite uncommon now, but using our common sense and intuition. You know, sometimes we can tell. Go on.
Your gut feeling.
Gut feeling, exactly, Laura. The gut feeling. And as you've done, and I know you mentioned that with some of the doctors, you didn't have the right experiences, but you were going with your gut feeling and persisted until you found the doctor that was actually understanding and to what the cause was. But so the links are in the description in terms of, as I mentioned, the Abbott World Major and the charities that Laura Beth has mentioned. So for anyone out there who may be going through this or something similar, or if you believe someone you know may be going through this, then as Laura said, is reach out to these people. Just say, you know, I mean, is it, because sometimes people are afraid to approach people because they don't want to hurt their feelings. How would you say, Laura Beth, is the best way to approach someone? If you think someone is going through something, is a simple hello, how are you type thing a good opener? Or should you say, is anything the matter? Or how would you say, you know, I know there's no right or wrong way, but how would you go about it?
It's difficult, isn't it? Along the lines of, I don't know, I've been concerned about you. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah.
And again, sometimes it can actually also be easier speaking to people that you are not so close to, which is why the charities are brilliant.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great for, you know, if anybody would like to talk to me, I've always been very open and saying my DMs are always open on Instagram. If anybody wants to drop me a message, then I can advise charities and I can maybe offer a little bit of advice, and no problem at all in doing that. That's why I want to be here today as well. So
exactly. I mean, it is interesting. You said talking to people you don't know as well. Sometimes that can help. I think that's why there's so many charities out there, in particular, like the charities that you did mention. I know that, you know, I've worked with Samaritans, and where they actually say sometimes, you know, without getting too biblical or whatever, but sometimes speaking to someone who you don't know at the end of a phone call can sometimes be easier than someone you do know, because you're afraid of, you know, being judged or whatever.
Yeah, I completely agree. My actual role with who I volunteer for now is a befriender. So users are now assigned to me, and they send me an email whenever they feel like it, and I reply a couple of times a week. And it's just so they can let the steam off, and we've got a bit of common ground that we can talk together about eating disorders or anxiety, or it could be anything.
Anything, even Doctor Who, maybe.
Even I've had books, tattoos, because I like tattoos, and spoken about all sorts. I've never watched Doctor Who.
I just threw Doctor Who because I think I watched it. It was on New Year's Day, but I watched it the other day. So for some reason, Doctor Who was in my head. But it's funny you mentioned tattoos. Tell us about that. Tell us about your love of tattoos. I know that you're all covered up nicely, and all that is. You mentioned the topic of tattoos, and I've got to say, you know, what you're saying through Believe Me is we don't want to make light of this, but sometimes I find that humor can help in some way. And I remember only a couple of weeks back, I think Elon Musk tweeted, "Make comedy legal," because I think sometimes we live in a world where people trying to make humor or joke of something, and as I say, this is not disrespect anyone, but as I said, I can laugh at myself. So as I said, Doctor Who just came to my head. It's nothing to do with you. You don't remind me of anyone from Doctor Who. It was just I was thinking maybe we need to exterminate all the bugs. Well, I don't know, but anyway, I'm sure there's a connection there, Laura. But yeah, tattoos. You mentioned tattoos, so people will always find there's a commonality. I don't have any tattoos myself, by the way, so you know, as I say, don't judge or whatever. But and Laura has tattoos, so don't judge. But you know, we're all people. We do what we do. But you mentioned that once you find a commonality, do you find that helps with people?
Well, Yeah, because it gives you ground, doesn't it, to talk and build from. I think gaining somebody's trust as well, and it's just building up a relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have, obviously here I mentioned about in fact, shall we go into the marathon majors? Yeah, Abbott's
Okay.
World Major. This is where I think where whilst we were following each other on social media, that's when I sort of noticed you, because as we all know, for those who are watching, Boston Marathon is seen as the pinnacle of
Easy.
marathon runners, and because you have to qualify for it. I appreciate there are some charity places, but it's seen as a qualifier, and only the fastest in each age category in the world who apply can qualify. So talk us through, I remember seeing vividly the pictures of you go there and the flights, and I think some of the flight backs you were with some other guys. I remember that lad from Adidas, and I felt like I was there because I knew I was going the year after, although I hadn't applied and I hadn't been. I'd half guessed that my qualifying time for my age was like half an hour within qualifying. So I'd half guessed that I'm almost guaranteed to play. So I was watching it and thinking, wow, it just looked amazing. I mean, you've done Paris, and Paris is, I've not ran Paris, and Paris I've been told is amazing as well. And then you ran London. I mean, it's almost like Paris, London, New York, everybody talk about pop music, but Paris, London's one of the most amazing marathons. And then you get to Boston. I mean, which order do you want to talk me through those?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I
Go
ran
straight into Boston.
I'll start with how I ran them, because so I ran London first.
Yeah.
And then I went on to Berlin, and I ran Berlin. Obviously, I wanted to qualify for Boston, and so I got my Boston qualifier at Berlin. But Boston, it's just hard to describe to people if they've not been. It's just so magical. The whole weekend, the city, it's everybody you see. Are you running the marathon? I've done some City World Major marathons, but I've never been to anywhere like Boston. It is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I've got Berlin. Well, fingers crossed, Berlin this year. But sorry.
Which marathons have you done? World Majors?
The world majors I've done. This is about you. I've done these 4. So I've done Chicago, Boston, New York, London, and I'm looking forward to hopefully Berlin, and then how I'm going to get into Tokyo. Like yourself, I think we've both got Tokyo to do. Yeah. I'm sure we'll probably bend someone's arm or something. But anyway, we won't talk about that. But yeah, it's Boston, like you say. I mean, having done London and Boston, and I know you're looking forward to doing New York as well, and I've done New York. Every one of them, you know, of the 4, as you found, everyone's unique in its own way. But there's something about Boston, I can't put my finger on it. But like you say, when you get there, it's not as massive as New York. New York is like at a completely, you know, it's like on steroids. It's at a completely high level. It's massive. Boston, of all the majors, I think it's the smallest of all the majors, but it just seems magical, doesn't it? A bit like in the background behind you there, the snow, it looks magical out there. There was something about it, wasn't there? You know?
Yeah, and I remember when I'd finished the race and I was going back to the hotel to get changed to go out and have a few cocktails. But there was cars and they was just beeping because they could see that I'd got my medal around me, and and these are busy roads and everybody's just shouting, and every shop that you see in the city, it's all marathon. It's so difficult to describe to somebody that hasn't done it. I love Boston. And then I ran Chicago after Boston. I love Chicago as well. Chicago is very special.
Chicago, my kind of town. Chicago is. There is something magical, and I know, obviously, you know, and I'm not being biased because it's an Abbott's World Major, and you were featured on the Abbott's World Major website. So, whilst I don't think you're an ambassador or advocate, but certainly you're a great beacon of light for, you know, Abbott's World Majors. But Boston becomes, of all the cities, I found the same in New York. When you get to New York, if you think Boston was loud, wait till you get to New York. But Boston, the whole city embraces the marathon. It's like even the non-runners, and I found this different to other cities when you go around in towns, and the Boston people, I think they're called Bostonians. Are they Bostonians? And I remember going into did you go to the Cheers bar?
No.
You didn't go to oh man, that's all Boston. But the police and everybody there, it's almost like everybody knows, and like you say, when they see you with the medal and they're waving. I remember getting to a bar and they gave me a free pint because they saw the medal around me. It says, "Oh, you don't have to pay, sir. It's on the house." I went, "What?" And then they gave me a souvenir. I wish I had the tankard here of the Boston Marathon, of that beer that they brew, the 26.2 beer that they brew in Boston for that day or that week. And everybody, I mean, some people might say, "Oh, it's just over the top," but I find it was a very genuine and very, very genuine people who were there, whether they're running, not running. I mean, the runners. I mean, the year you done it, Laura, tell us about, because it was a sunny one, wasn't it? Shall I say? Shall I put it mildly? It was a hot one.
It's one of the hottest on record. Yeah. And obviously, I mean, it's like this. So I was training in normal cold Derbyshire weather, not done any sun or heat, and it was so hot the day before. I remember seeing this lady in the park, and she was sat there with a bikini. I was like, I can't believe I've trained in winter weather and I've come here and there's people in the park wearing bikinis. It was so hot. But the year you did it, didn't it absolutely throw it down?
It's seeing the snow there brings me memories of my one. It was, you had one of the hottest. The following year we had I appreciate people who tuned in to listen to yourself, Laura. I like the comments. Maybe you should have your channel, Laura. But quickly about mine, those who've not seen my story, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people probably coming to watch this who know you but don't know me. So I'll just quickly describe what you see in the background there, the snow. It was snowing the day before Boston Marathon, and we were given a forecast of storm winds, rain, and it would be cold, and boy it was. I ran virtually the whole marathon in all my layers and the hat, waterproofs, everything. It did not stop raining for the whole run. It was non-stop. And the snow at the start was sort of an awakening for me, and I think half of the elite field withdrew, and I think over 2,000 runners didn't finish that particular run. So it was the worst weather in 100 years, but we got there, we finished. Those of us who did finish, it's like something really special. But I'd managed to take off some of the layers so I could show my top and get at least one photo at the finish line of, say, you know, because your bib number shows for the photos, doesn't it? So mine, you couldn't see my bib, so there's no photos of me running. But I've seen videos where I'm thinking, I'm sorry, but I was running in that. It was like you can't see anyone through the rain. It was just like, you know, when when the rain bounces off the ground and it bounces back up, it was like bouncing up, you know, a good foot up. It was, I mean, we tried to stay dry for the start, and people were very prepared, and change of shoes so that when they started, but as soon as we go, because the first 6 miles of Boston is downhill, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Within the first mile or two, my feet were just soaked through because it's like rivers of water just coming down the hill. So, it was.
In the sun, I like running in the rain.
You like running in the rain. It's funny. I like running in the sun, but then, you know, it's literally 5 days later I run London, and it was the hottest London ever. So, you know, that was quite a week for me experience. But more back to yourself, Laura. You're the guest, and people don't want to hear about me. I know you do, but
I think.
What's that? Sorry.
I'll start my own channel. You can be the first person I can interview.
Well, there you go. That's there's an idea, Laura. Definitely, if you want to go for that, I'm up for that. I'm always up for chatting. If there's anyone else watching who want me on as a guest and talk about my nightmare experience. By the way, Laura, there was a guy from I think he's UK but lives in Seattle, and he'd bumped into me in Boston, London. and then in Chicago. I mean, what's the odds of that? And I remember at Chicago, mile 20, he's going, "Hey, Donato, how you doing?" And I went, "Oh," and so you're in a bit of a daze, because you're racing and it's like mile 19 and you've got another, 7 miles to go. And he says, "Oh, I'll follow your channel." And we're chatting away as you're running, with your GoPro on, as you do. But it's a small world out there, and you don't know who knows and who watches. But he actually said, some people commented, "Oh, if you're running a particular race tonight, I'll make sure I'm not there because the weather's always bad." And I'm thinking, but I'm a survivor, so like you're a survivor as well, Laura Beth. So, but in terms of your journey, Berlin, you just nonchalantly said, "Oh, I just rocked up and ran a Boston qualifier." You must have had your mindset training. You'd completed London. When did you decide you wanted to do a Boston qualifier? Was it before London?
Well, I knew I wanted to do all the majors. So
Okay.
I ran London, and I got a particularly good time. Well, it was a time there. And and I wanted to run Boston so much, and I got into Berlin. I knew Berlin was a Boston qualifier. So to be honest with you, Berlin was to qualify for Boston, because London wasn't a qualifying race. I think it now is for Boston. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So I went to Berlin to qualify for Boston. But I love Berlin. But you'll have a great time in Berlin.
Yeah.
I just hope that marathons are going to happen this year. I really hope that we can race.
Yes, same here. There is a light somewhere. I hope it is there, in some way. We did have some races last year, more time trial basis. And as I say, I don't want to get into the C19 debate right now of what's going on here in the UK, but it's we'll get through this in some way. But I know that you have some races planned, ultras. Is that right, Laura? You did touch on at the beginning saying you're going to ultras, so you're training right now for your first ultra, and then you've got is it a race in May and then another one in June? Tell us about that.
Again, the one in May should have happened last May. So it's not a massive, huge ultra distance. I'm just stepping into it. So it's just over a 30 miler. So hopefully that's going to happen in May. And then in June, it's a 70k, which is in the Peak District. And I love going off into the Peak District to run. So, but again, it's just so undecided. So I'm still out at the minute. I'm still running. I'm going to get the miles in. And hopefully it happens this year. To be honest, I was quite disappointed at the back end of last year. I should have had a 38-mile race. And I trained up for it. I was really ready to go. Got my race number. And the day I got my race number was the day it got blooming cancelled. I was gutted.
Oh.
Crazy.
Yeah. How would you say, with a lot that's going on and there's a lot of uncertainty and so on, how do you remain motivated to keep running? Or is it just a case of just going out running and not thinking about whether there'll be a race or no race? You just go out and run and enjoy the run. How do you stay motivated?
Well, you see, running is a big part of my recovery with my eating disorder. So I feel so much better when I go out and run. I feel so much better when I get the big miles in. And to be honest with you, for the last couple of years, I haven't been doing a massive amount of racing anyway. So it's just been about getting out and getting the big miles in. So, I mean, at the minute I'm having a easier mileage month in January. So I'm doing about 50 miles a week, but normally it's 85 up to 100. So, but I love it. I love my big distances.
Wow, I can see again, the emotions coming through. You can see it in your eyes and smile that the big distances really do it for you. So if you enjoy that, I must be guessing, because we're recording this now literally after the weekend of the Carbon X2 challenge.
Did you watch?
I was definitely watching it. I mean, I, like yourself, Laura Beth, as being on here as a guest, I had Carla Molinaro, none other, as a guest on here. And having chatted and knowing Carla, it was amazing. I loved it. Wow. I mean, what were you thinking when you were watching it? Firstly, have you gone out and bought your Hoka Carbon X2?
I haven't. Have you?
Would you believe they're arriving in about an hour's time? It's a long story. It's a long story, but I had ordered them before Christmas on pre-order, but there was all sorts of stock issues, and then they cancelled my order. And then someone messaged me when we were when that live Hoka X2 was going on.
Right.
I was chatting in there live on YouTube, and some of my subscribers saw me commenting and then said, "Hey Donato, have you got your Hoka Carbon X2 yet?" And I said, "No, they've been cancelled." He says, "Oh, go and order again." So I did, and they're arriving today, although I won't be out because it's still deep snow, so I don't think they're designed for running at speed. I don't think I'll be running. I mean, when I saw, I mean, they're like machines. I know these guys have been running for many years, many decades, but it's incredible the athleticism in those guys. And I know you used that 3-letter word early on, where jog. Yeah, the word jog, which I think some people take offence at that, but
I do.
What if they call you a jogger instead of a runner?
Oh, I'm a runner.
Yes, you are a runner. We're all runners, but to me, it's immaterial. I mean, whether they jog, but people did comment about Jim Walmsley and that pace group at the start. They were all saying, "Oh, it looks like they're jogging," and I'm thinking, I wish I could jog at that pace, because they were running sub 6 minutes. Yeah, they're running 5-minute 55s, but they look so calm and relaxed, almost like poetry in motion, a bit like when we watch Eliud Kipchoge. Now, obviously, the speed that he's running to run the sub 2 is a different speed to running, the 6-hour 100K. But they're both awesome athletes, but in different ways. I mean, Jim Walmsley, Carlo Molinaro, these guys and girls are amazing. I mean, do you aspire? I mean, I know you're sort of dipping your toe in it and you love the distances. Do you see yourself, maybe one day, Laura Beth, I'll say, when I'm watching you on TV going for the 100K world record, I say, "Hey, I remember Laura Beth on January the 26th, 2021. She was chatting with me live during her run in the snow." That shows dedication there, Laura. I mean,
I do fancy getting up into the big distances, and I've got my eye on future big ultras. But it's not so much for the speed; it's just getting off there and doing. I mean, I'm not massively quick, but yeah, I definitely want to get off and do those really big, ridiculous distances. But I would never have thought, even 3 years ago, when I was marathon running, that I'd be in a position now where I'm thinking, I want to go off and do these crazy races around the world.
Yeah. I feel the same way. It's something you obviously love traveling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you love traveling. You love running, and what better way of combining the two by
the world.
Yeah. Although there is one ultra which you might want to look up, and a friend of mine mentioned it to me a few years, and I think it tarnished me for life. It's one of those across a desert in the States. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I mean, you've heard of the Marathon des Sables. I mean, is that on your list? Is that on your list?
Definitely.
Yeah, that's on your list. Well, this one apparently is tougher than that. I'll have to dig out the name of that and maybe send it to you after this. I wish I'd had done my proper notes and written it down, but it's one of those classic where the heat and the desert, you've got nowhere to hide. It is just raw heat. And I think, as you probably know, with endurance and what was mentioned during that Hoka X2 Carbon X2 challenge, whatever it was, Hoka X Hub, they were talking about nutrition and hydration. And what advice would you give folks out there when you're running marathons, training and so on? What are your top tips? Do you have any sort of top 2, top 3 tips?
Nutrition wise, to be fair, I'm not very good with gels. I like flapjacks when I'm running. Big distances, I do like having proper food. The energy gels, they don't seem to sit well in my belly. I always run on breakfast. And when I'm going off a big run the following day, I always stock up the night before. But yeah, I think it's trial and error and just finding what suits you when you're out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've had drinks before and they've turned my belly into all sorts of somersaults. But it is just trying, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
all different. But yeah, you need to start learning to fuel on proper food, I think, when you're doing big distances.
Yeah. Yeah.
How far are you running? What's your big distances? Are you
My
getting into the world?
in my sorts of runs, I think in terms of the training, when I'm training for marathons, I will go up to 20, maybe 21 miles, and but in terms of how I how I hydrate and nutrition, I don't think anyone wants to copy me. So I do fuel up the night before, and I'm always hydrated. So I always maintain hydration always throughout the week. So I'm always hydrated whenever I go for a run. So depending on unless it's extremely hot, I don't drink or eat anything during a long run. So it's just a long, easy run. So I'm training my body to burn the right fats. But yeah, some people have ticked me off saying, "Oh, you should be hydrating and doing this and doing that." But as you say, everyone's different, and it's so you would say in terms of tip is trial and error and see what's best work for you.
I could say obviously energy gels don't work for me, but they can really work for the next person. We're all different. And I'm not particularly that great drinking while I'm running either. I mean, I've run some big distances, and I should probably drink more. But I think, like I say, just trial and error. You do know what your body wants and what it needs.
Yeah. I think one of the common phrases I hear is drink to thirst. But then some people say, well, if you're thirsty, it's too late. But just keep drinking regular. And it's funny you mentioned about gels. I get on fine with gels. I don't have an issue. I think the issue arrives a couple of hours after I finished, but I won't go into that detail. Depending on what I eat and drink after the meal. So obviously with the gels down there. But anyway, I don't have any issues during the race itself with gels, and I've tried all different ones, and I've got some here, but I won't hold them up or whatever because they don't need any free advertisement. But anyway, joking aside, I've got to say, Laura, it's absolutely fantastic. I appreciate. I don't want you getting cold out there, so I think we'll just quickly wrap up now in terms of what we've been chatting through. As I've said, I really do appreciate the time you've taken out to come and share with us your story, and also on a very sensitive topic. And I think you're very, I mean, without coining the cliche, you are absolutely brave and a hero coming out saying this. And I do appreciate that talking about it can sometimes be bring back bad memories and things like that, and emotions, and it's quite raw, and I could see through that with you that it is being very raw. But as you say, and you say that in your write-up on the Abbott World Major website, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there is hope in the same way of what's going on right now across the world, that we are in dark times, but there is light and there is hope. And for each of us, we can show our light in it however we want and whatever we do. But thank you so much, Laura, for sharing with us your story. I think you've gone a bit on mute.
Have I?
Oh, no, got you now. Yeah. Do you want to say that again? Repeat it again?
It's been so lovely to talk to you. Like I say, we've been social media friends for a few years now, so it's lovely to chat.
Yeah, it's absolutely I think it's 5 years now we've been on the old social meds. But yeah, it's fantastic sharing with you. Enjoy your run. Continued running. How many more miles have you got now before you?
I'm not sure. Probably about 10, I think. And then I'll get back and have a coffee, warm up.
Have a coffee and warm up. Well, you take care of yourself, Laura, and we'll be speaking very soon again. Love you lots.
Thank you. Take care.